The entire classroom went silent the moment the door opened. Just seconds earlier, laughter had echoed off the pale green walls of Jefferson Middle School, sharp and careless, cutting deeper than anyone realized. A small boy stood near the chalkboard, his hands trembling at his sides, his dark eyes fixed on the scuffed floor tiles as if they might open and swallow him whole. His name was Isaiah Thompson, and at just 11 years old, he was learning a lesson no child should ever have to learn, that sometimes the hardest battles are fought without armor. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for what's right, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this matter, and your support keeps them alive. It had started as a simple classroom assignment. Career Day presentations. Each student was asked to stand in front of the class and talk about what their parents did for a living. Some spoke proudly about mothers who were nurses, fathers who owned auto shops, parents who worked at grocery stores or drove buses. The room buzzed with innocent excitement. When it was Isaiah's turn, he walked slowly to the front. His sneakers were worn at the edges, the soles slightly separating from the fabric. His sweater, though clean, had been carefully mended at the elbow. He carried no poster board, no printed photos. Just a folded piece of notebook paper clutched tightly in his hand. His voice was soft at first, but steady. He said his father was a 4-star general in the United States Army. He said his dad was stationed overseas and couldn't always come home. He said his father worked hard to protect people he didn't even know. For a moment, there was silence. Then came the snickers. A few boys in the back exchanged looks. One girl rolled her eyes. The whispers began, spreading like wildfire across dry grass. Mrs. Davenport, their teacher, crossed her arms. She had been teaching for over 15 years, and she prided herself on being practical. She believed in facts, in realism. When she looked at Isaiah, at his thrift store clothes, at the absence of flashy school supplies, something in her mind refused to connect the image of this boy with the title he had just spoken. Her lips tightened. She told him gently but firmly that exaggerating wasn't necessary. She said Career Day was about honesty. She suggested that maybe his father had a different role in the military, something more realistic. Her tone wasn't cruel, but it carried disbelief heavy enough to crush a child's spirit. Isaiah felt heat rise behind his eyes. He tried to explain that his father really was a 4-star general. He said his dad had promised to visit soon. He said sometimes important jobs didn't look important from the outside. The class erupted again, louder this time. Mrs. Davenport sighed and told Isaiah to sit down until he was ready to tell the truth. That was the moment something inside him cracked. Isaiah had grown used to questions. He had grown used to neighbors who didn't understand why his family lived modestly when his father held such a high rank. What they didn't see were the sacrifices. The donations his father made quietly. The way he insisted his family live humbly. The long absences that left Isaiah helping his mother fix leaky faucets and carry groceries. But he had never been called a liar in front of an entire classroom. He walked back to his seat slowly, each step heavier than the last. He kept his head down, but tears blurred his vision. He wasn't ashamed of his father. He was proud. Proud of the medals tucked away in a wooden box at home. Proud of the folded flag displayed in their living room from his grandfather's service. Proud of the discipline, the honor, the quiet strength his father embodied. Yet none of that mattered in that room. The bell rang for recess, but Isaiah stayed seated. The laughter echoed in his ears long after the classroom emptied. What no one knew was that his father had landed that very morning. General Marcus Thompson had spent the last 8 months overseas overseeing critical operations. His uniform carried 4 silver stars on each shoulder, but he wore them lightly. He believed leadership meant service. He had declined interviews, avoided public praise, and focused solely on the safety of the soldiers under his command. The only promise he had made to himself during those long nights abroad was that he would surprise his son at school for Career Day. He arrived at Jefferson Middle School just after noon, dressed in full uniform, polished boots reflecting the sunlight. The American flag patch rested proudly on his sleeve. His presence alone commanded respect, but his eyes held warmth, the kind only a father carries when thinking about his child. At the front office, staff members straightened instinctively. Calls were made, papers shuffled. Mrs. Davenport was summoned. When she heard that a high-ranking military official was here for Career Day, her first thought was excitement. Perhaps another student had undersold their presentation. She walked briskly toward the entrance. And then she saw him. 4 stars. Perfectly aligned. Real. Her breath caught. General Thompson removed his cap politely and extended his hand. He introduced himself and explained he was Isaiah's father. He apologized for arriving late but said he wouldn't have missed this day for anything in the world. The color drained from Mrs. Davenport's face. The weight of her earlier words came crashing back with brutal clarity. She led him toward the classroom, her steps slower now, her confidence replaced with something far heavier. Inside, the students were settling back into their seats. The chatter faded when they noticed the uniform. Conversations died mid-sentence as boots echoed against the tile floor. Isaiah looked up. For a split second, he thought he was imagining it. But then their eyes met. His father smiled. The kind of smile that says, I see you. I believe you. I am here. Mrs. Davenport's voice trembled slightly as she reintroduced Isaiah to the class and announced that his father had come to speak. General Thompson began not with his rank, but with a story. He spoke about growing up in a small town with very little money. He spoke about being underestimated. About teachers who doubted him. About classmates who laughed when he said he wanted to lead. He said titles are earned through sacrifice, not appearance. He said integrity means telling the truth even when no one believes you. As he spoke, he walked gently toward his son and placed a firm, reassuring hand on Isaiah's shoulder. The classroom was utterly silent. Some students stared at Isaiah with wide eyes. The same boys who had laughed now avoided his gaze. A few looked ashamed. Mrs. Davenport felt tears sting her eyes. She realized in that moment how quickly assumptions can wound. How dangerous it is to measure potential by clothing, by neighborhood, by anything other than character. When the general finished, he didn't boast. He didn't scold. He simply thanked the class for listening and said he was proud of his son for standing by the truth. Isaiah stood taller that day. Not because his father wore 4 stars, but because he had learned something far greater. The truth does not shrink under doubt. It waits. After the presentation, Mrs. Davenport asked to speak privately with Isaiah and his father. Her apology was sincere, her voice unsteady. She admitted she had allowed bias to cloud her judgment. She promised to do better. Not just for Isaiah, but for every student who walked into her classroom carrying invisible stories. General Thompson accepted her apology with grace. He said leadership also means admitting mistakes. In the weeks that followed, something shifted at Jefferson Middle School. Mrs. Davenport introduced lessons about assumptions and respect. She invited parents from all backgrounds to share their journeys. The classroom became a place where stories were heard instead of questioned. Isaiah no longer shrank into his seat. He joined the debate team. He raised his hand more often. The memory of that painful morning never fully disappeared, but it transformed into fuel. At home, his father reminded him that strength isn't loud. It doesn't need applause. It stands firm in truth. Years later, when Isaiah stood at his high school graduation podium, he spoke about that day. He spoke about humiliation, about resilience, about forgiveness. He thanked his teacher for learning alongside him. And he thanked his father for showing up, not just in uniform, but in spirit. The audience rose to their feet. Because they understood. They understood that sometimes the most powerful entrances are not made to prove others wrong, but to lift someone up. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of believing in someone when the world doubts them, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more stories that inspire courage and compassion. And before this story ends, I have one special request. Comment the word integrity below if you believe truth always rises, no matter how long it's doubted. Isaiah's journey was never about 4 stars. It was about character. About a young boy who refused to trade honesty for acceptance. About a father who understood that the greatest rank he would ever hold was dad. And about a teacher who learned that the most important lessons are often the ones we never planned to teach. Long after the applause faded, long after the uniform was folded away again, the impact of that day remained. A classroom changed. A teacher grew. A boy discovered unshakable confidence. And somewhere, in every child who has ever been doubted, there lives the same quiet strength, waiting for the door to open.